All right, hi. My name is Chenga, and I am not really sure how this story is going to go, but bear with me. I don't usually tell personal stories. When I was 14, I was reading a book called Gods and Fighting Man, and it is a huge old collection of Irish folktales and legends. And it has all these great stories about heroes and fighters and gods, and it also has stories about bards and storytellers and people who knew all the legends and sang all the songs and traveled around sharing them with people. And I thought that that was amazing. So at the age of 14, I decided that I was going to be a bard. And soon after, my parents found out about this, and they kind of pulled me aside and told me that bards don't exist anymore. So that was that. And they explained to me that bards used to exist a long time ago, before TV and before radio and before the internet and before computers. And I was really sad about that, because that sounded like a great career choice at the time. And they also told me that bards only kind of exist in books and movies and games. And that kind of caught my attention, and I said, what games? So that is how I became a gamer at the age of 14. And it was my parents' idea. And they bought me a rule book for Dungeons and Dragons. And that's how I started playing a bard. And that was a lot of fun. And I gathered my friends and we started playing, and somehow I always ended up being either a bard or the storyteller. I don't know if you've ever played a role-play game. You always need a storyteller to tell the story, and all the other people are characters in it. So that's how I started making up stories and sharing them with my friends. And when we were in high school, a few years later, we went to this convention for gamers and nerds and other weird people, and it was a lot of fun. And there were these people talking about different kinds of role-play games. So up to that point, we were only playing Dungeons and Dragons, or rather the Hungarian rip-off version of Dungeons and Dragons, because it was not translated at the time. So people were talking about other games, and there was this one girl, and she said, have you ever played a game called Changeling? And we said, no, we never heard about it. It doesn't exist in Hungarian, so what is it? And she said, that's the most beautiful game you will ever play. And that was interesting, because gamers usually say that it's fun, it's awesome, it's badass, stuff like that about, you know, nerdy things. But saying that it's a beautiful game was kind of weird. So I went home and I looked up this game that she talked about, and of course it did not exist anywhere within the country. So I emailed some friends who lived abroad and asked them if they could get a book for me. These games come with huge, heavy, colorful, very expensive rule books. And by that time my English was good enough to read it. So one of my friends sent me this rule book in English, and I started reading the rules to be able to play the game. And let me tell you, it is the most beautiful game you'll ever play. It's the basic idea of the game is that you are something that's called a changeling. You are an immortal fairy tale soul in a human body. Your character, the character that you play in the game, is somebody who deep inside is immortal and comes from the world of magic and dreams, the world of the dreaming. But because you have to survive in the mundane world, you have to survive the everyday boredom and the everyday challenges of living in a real mundane world, you have to have a human body and a human life. And nobody knows what you really are except for other people like you. If you meet another changeling in the world, you recognize them. You see that spark of the dreaming inside, and you can tell that they are just as special as you are, and that their soul also comes from the world of fairy tales and the world of magic. And I thought that was a beautiful idea. And there are all kinds of different changelings in the game. You can be a fairy. you can be a giant, you can be a kind of a magical animal inside. You can pick whatever you want to play, and there is this one kind of changeling in the game that's called an Eshu. And they are the spirits of storytellers. They are the fairies that come from the magic of storytelling. They are the fairies that travel the world in a mortal body, and they share stories with people. And they have two special gifts that make them unique, even in the world of the dreaming. One is that they can tell amazing stories, and the second is that they always travel, and they always arrive exactly in the perfect moment, exactly where they need to be in that moment. And they don't always take the shortest road, but they always take the most interesting. And I thought that was such a perfect idea of what a storyteller can be. So we started playing the game, and as we went along, I was still thinking about becoming a storyteller more and more, until I was in college when I found out that you can actually be a storyteller, and you can actually be a professional storyteller who travels and shares stories with people. And that was the moment that they call the chrysalis in the game. They have a word for it. That's the moment when you realize what you really are and where you really need to be. And in that moment, I went back to my parents again, and I told them that I am going to be a storyteller. And that's what happened. And as I started living the life of a storyteller, a traveling storyteller, I started realizing just how perfectly that childhood game describes what I am doing, how I am traveling, and I always end up where I need to be, and how I always end up telling the right stories to the right people, or at least I hope so. And it also describes how these special people need to live from the dreams. They have to inspire people, and that inspiration comes back to them as energy, as sparks, as the force of life. And also, even the traveling thing was true. One time I was traveling back home from the US, for my first time in the USA, to Hungary, and I got lost in New York at the JFK airport, and I had no clue where I was going, and I was 2 hours past my flight. So I kind of ran up to the gate where my flight had been 2 hours ago, and I asked them what I need to do now, if I need to go to a hotel room and try to do tomorrow or something, and they said, no, your flight is still here, it's late. So that was the moment when I thought, I really just caught a flight that was supposed to leave 2 hours ago. And I thought about how luck is needed for traveling, and how stories come out of those adventures, and how stories come out of those travels, and how you get to go to places and then come back and tell stories about them. And that was a really interesting experience, how a game called Changeling the Dreaming started turning into the life that I'm living now. And just to finish up this whole story where I am now, we are just starting the semester tomorrow at ETSU at the storytelling department. I am studying storytelling, which always has been a dream of mine. And we decided to start a class this semester for gaming. We named it Interactive Storytelling, and the class is going to play role-play games and explore storytelling through role-play games, which is going to be awesome. And once again, I find myself being the storyteller for the group, and yes, we are going to be playing Changeling. And I was really, really excited about that idea. And well, I think the moral of the story could be that if there is something that you really like to do, and something that's just perfect for you, try to find a way to get university credit for it. That's it, thank you.